Welcome to the 7 Cents Podcast, where we go beyond dollars and cents to unlock the mindset beyond the money.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy Mike Macklin, aka Money Mike, the financial Thanos, because I'm snapping my fingers and I'm turning your financial problems to dust.
And I'm Coach RL, your money mindset coach. Mind right, money right, legacy locked in.
Guys, this is not your average financial podcast. We're breaking down money myths, mindset traps, and economic game plans.
We keep it real, raw, and relevant, from micro money moves to macro financial shifts.
This is a 7 Cents podcast where your mind meets your money.
All right, so let's talk about the Concorde. The Concorde was a joint Anglo-French project to develop a supersonic airline, which was developed in the 1960s and was retired around 2003. Now, after a fatal crash. But let's go over the key facts, right? So it was a joint venture between British Airlines, so British Aircraft Corporation, and Aristotle, which is a French airline. It was designed to fly at speeds exceeding Mach 2. And this was supposed to be a commercial airplane, right? So the first test was developed in 1969, and the aircraft entered commercial service in 1976 with Air France and British Airways. The Concorde featured a distinct design with a delta wing and a narrow fuselage and drooped nose for landing visibility. On the YouTube, I'm going to drop a picture so people can see what that looks like. Concorde primarily flew transatlantic routes connecting cities from like London, France, New York. The Concorde was known for its luxurious interior and the ability to fly passengers at high speeds, attracting a clientele of business executives, celebrities, and royalty. So it was retired in 2003 after 2002 crash. It basically was retired because of the high operating cost of the aircraft. And then in July 2025, July 25 to in the year 2000, Air France flight 5490 crashed shortly after takeoff with all 109 occupants and 4 on the ground killed. So the cost to develop represented a significant economic loss on both sides of the channel. That's France and the British channel, with only 20 aircraft being finally built. And they say so, despite the retirement, the Concorde remains a symbol of technological innovation and a testament to the pursuit of supersonic airspeed. But what we want to talk to you guys today about is sunken cost fallacy and how much money they put into this project and how long they developed the project. We talked that from 1969 to 2003. They say, what's the rock that sank the ship? Really, what sunk it was that plane crash, but realistically, it was the economic downpour for both France and Britain. So let's talk about sunk cost fallacy. Sunk cost fallacy is a cognitive bias where you felt like you put so much into something that you just can't let it go. I think this takes a huge leap in everybody's lives to understand what it is. Because once you start realizing, hey, there are some things that I genuinely can't let go because I put too much time and money into it. When you realize that what actually has value and what is a sunk cost fallacy, then you start to understand, all right, there are some things in my life that we need to let go. So that's where we're going to start today, Mike. That's where we're going to start today. Let's talk about sunk cost fallacy.
All right, let's do it, man. Let's do it. Definitely something we definitely should be taking a look at. And I really hope that by the end of this, you guys can apply this principle and really take a look at what you're doing. We're coming from a financial standpoint, but as they say, life imitates art. So you could also apply this to other things in your life. So don't just put this in the narrow tunnel vision of just your finances. Hopefully, this is something that's going to help not just your pocket, but your life in general. So I'm excited about this. I'm ready to really dive deep into this and dig into this. And hopefully by the end of this, you guys will really get some value from this because I think this is going to be a fun topic.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, so tell me about this, man. So what's the worst financial decision you ever had had that was like sunk cost fallacy, and then how did that impact your long-term strategy?
Okay, I'm gonna use something more recent. I started to use something generic, but I didn't want to do that. I want to use something more recent. If you don't know already, I'm a personal financial coach. I specialize in a six-step system that is going to help you basically achieve financial success. Now, that is going to be based off of your own picture of what financial success is, but that is the overall goal, is to get you to that finish line. And in that journey, I've obviously made mistakes of my own. And I'm going with the most recent mistake that I've made. And that is putting too much time into something that wasn't making me as much money as I felt like I needed to. Now, several things that I do aside from financial coaching. One of them is I drive Uber sometimes. So, yes, I do still do a little bit of work out there. I'm just a busybody and I enjoy bringing in as much money as possible. And for me, Uber makes sense because my thought was, if I'm gonna drive around the city, I might as well get paid for it. So that's what kind of got me into Uber. Anyhow, the second thing that I do is I'm also a day trader. I've been day trading for about 6 years now. And actually, Rob and I had this conversation about the amount of time spent on one versus the other and the economic output of them both. So I'm gonna put this guy in front of you guys. And the main value I hope you guys get from this is, no matter how far you get along the process, you can still make these mistakes. So we're financial experts and we still make mistakes like this. So I want you guys to understand that, listen, nobody's perfect out here. So if you're making these mistakes, look, you're not by yourself. So anywho, so again, for a while I was driving Uber like almost full time, like 8, 10 hours a day sometimes, because the money was a lot more than what I expected it to be. When I initially came into it, I was like, okay, if I make about $800 a month, then I'll be okay, because it's a nice little piece of money for what I'm doing. But my first week of doing Uber, I made shoot almost 2,000 in that week. So I'm like, oh shoot, this is actually all right. But anyhow, anyway, I started driving Uber and it started wearing on me. Just how long I was out there, I started getting tired. But I'm like, but I like the money. You know what I'm saying? But then I started looking at other things I was doing and how much time I was spending in that. So that's where the day trading came into the conversation. I'm like, okay, I can sit down and day trade for, I typically do 90 minutes a day. That's like the max I'll do. But I can sit down for that 90 minutes. And I've had days where I've made $2,000, $2,500. So I'm looking at that comparison. I'm like, wait a minute. I drove Uber all week and made $2,000. I sat down for 90 minutes and day traded and made $2,000. So I'm like, hold up, a week versus 90 minutes. Why am I driving so much Uber when I can focus in on this particular portion? And that's what really made me think of this concept is, okay, how much time do we burn because the money's coming in? Because maybe we're afraid to pivot and do something else that could exponentially change that. And so for me, that was a huge aha moment. And the funny part is, again, me and Rob, we talk quite a bit about different things, business, life, everything. And when I told him that, it made me look inward. Like, so why are you driving so much Uber if you could just sit down and day
Yeah.
trade and make the same amount? So that's my story as quickly as I can make that.
Yeah, and I got one too, and and it was for me really being a hard head. When I got into day trading, I was day trading crypto and I was day trading stocks at the same time. I had really my biggest mistake was I was new to the game and I was really in over my head and trying to manage my portfolio. I started to get into meme coins which are extremely risky. And then I got some advice from another good friend that was a crypto trader, and he was really hard on this meme coin called Extreme. And so initially I put a little bit of money into it, probably a couple $100, and then the coin went down a little bit. So I figured, hey, buy the dip, so I put a couple of hundred more bucks into it. Then it went down again. And then it basically, probably within 2 weeks, crash, and even after the crash, now this is like true sunken cost fallacy. Even after the meme crashed, the coin crashed, I was still like, hey, I put almost thousands of dollars into this project now. I can't give up on this project. Now, mind you, if I would have did the fundamental analysis of the game, the coin was basically worthless. But I, in my mind, believe with no research or evidence that this coin was going to skyrocket back up, which is absolutely wasn't the truth to this day. The coin is dead. But continued to put money into the coin. It was just the most ridiculous thing I ever did. But again, I went, got more educated, and I learned about a lot of these biases. And I realized that this shit is real. Like, it's real. Like, you can get stuck because you invested too much into something, and you will not be able to walk yourself off of the ledge, and because you are committed to jumping, you already jumped, so you like, hey, I'm not pulling this parachute. I committed. The parachute said it was gonna pop. It's crazy, and a lot of us think this way, right? It's not just a let me lower my hand real quick. It's not just a concept that resonates with a few people or people who don't understand it. Like, it is a real part that's embedded in you. So you have to be able to recognize it when it happens and then self-regulate. That's basically what it is, a self-regulation. Use that self-regulation tool with the knowledge that you're learning right now. Yeah, but it was a tough time. But after well, let me take a step back. After reading the definition and learning the definition as I was going through the CFP program, because they go over a lot of biases that you have, because sometimes you have to deal with client. That's the biggest part about being a financial advisor is you have to deal with clients and their biases. And so not only are you a money guy, you're a god doggone therapist. So now,
This is
now I
facts.
have to,
This is facts.
yeah, now I got to walk you back from what the hell you think you know, and then give you solid proof and evidence that just because you saw Blockbuster take off from 2000, or oh, let me back that up, from 1998 to 2003 doesn't mean that Netflix is going to take off and have the same effects just because they're related and similar, right? That's a whole nother show. But at the end of the day, people have those types of biases that they will not move off of. So you just have to educate them. And this is one of those things, man. It's called sunk cost fallacy. Google it. Like, it's a really big thing, man. Is it preventable? Yes. But before we get into how it's preventable, let's talk about sunk cost fallacies outside of finance. Have you ever experienced sunk cost fallacy outside of finance?
I absolutely. My best example of that would just be, I don't want to get too personal with it, but a relationship I had in the past. The relationship, I'll shorthand this a whole lot. The relationship essentially took a lot away from me and I had to become somebody different just to
Mm,
become a part of that relationship. And it was something I was very uncomfortable with for like years and years. But I kept talking myself out of walking away from this because in my mind, a lot of factors was contributed. One, I left the city I was living in at the time to be in this relationship, to close the gap, if you will, for one. For two, the person, it was almost like a codependent thing because it felt like me being with that person, the highlight of it was my ability to help her kind of pivot out of what she was previously in into what she became after dealing with me for a while. And so that sunken cost fallacy came in. It was like, okay, you've poured too much essentially into this person to walk away from it. So it was almost like a selfish kind of thing. Okay, hey, listen, it's almost like I feel like I had to be the hero of this story and help her get to the proverbial finish line before I walked away. So every time I thought about walking away, I'm like, man, you're gonna leave this person hanging of sorts. But again, the real issue was this was taken away from me. I couldn't really pursue my business like I wanted to. I was doing things outside of character, changing who I was. And again, all behind trying to be the hero of this story and help somebody get to a different place. So it is definitely a lot of the psychological aspects you talked about is definitely something that lended his hand into that decision. And I know for a fact that there are a lot of us out here. And I'm not trying to break up nobody. Listen, I'm
Yeah,
not trying to do
yeah.
that, but I'm just saying, if you find yourself in this situation where it's starting to take away from you or is devaluing you, you're going to really want to sit and take a step back, like Rob said, and really reevaluate this. Hold on now, because this is another show for another talk for another day, another show. But success comes from a certain degree of selfishness. So
Fact.
you have to look out for yourself first before anything else in your life. And I don't care what nobody says. It may make me paint me as the villain, but I'm telling you this from life experience. If you don't take care of yourself first, no matter what you go into, it's not going to succeed because if you're not right, it's not going to be right.
It's not gonna be right. No, that's really good. And I'm gonna tell you how common that is because sunk cost fallacy, same story. But this is a good piece to transitioning, right? It was a girl and I was doing the whining and dining and giving, spending time and pouring into this person. And one of my homies, and that's why I say I'm gonna shorten the story up because it's the same as yours. I put in so much time, I put in so much money into this relationship. One of my homies said, "Why do you even like her?" And I said, "She's cute, but outside of that, I've put in so much time. That's not a reason to like somebody. I put in so much time and money." He was like, the next question was, "But what did she do for you?" And then I realized the value of my investment. Like I'm investing into this person and I'm pouring all of my stuff into this person, but I'm not getting any secure blanket out of it. Couldn't cook, always just never emotionally supported me. And I'm not trying to break nobody up, but that's just how it is. Never emotionally supported me, never cheered me on when I did good things. Sometimes wasn't at the most important things in my life. And I realized with those questions that I really was investing in something that had no return. And now, from a life perspective and a financial perspective, I do use that in a lot of relationships, even if it's just a friendship. And that's another reason the way I am today, because at the end of the day, when I initiate a friendship and we met in the military, but truly met through a mutual friend who he told me about your heart. And that's what really drew me to connecting with you. But in beginning a relationship, I always try to start with providing value, and my expectation is that the value is received. Not that I receive anything else back, and maybe your return of what I've invested is different than what you would perceive, but I always try to provide value. And if you take that, what I'm giving you, and and that's how I do in my business as well. If you take that and you run with it, I feel good about it because I felt heard, I felt seen, and to me, that provides some level of value to what it is that I do. Now, if you just gonna take it, run with it, or and not be able to use it, because at the end of the day, even if it's a financial coach, if I just sit here and give you all the free game, and then the next thing I look up and your website look like mine, your programs look like mine, I did something right. I did something that somebody else wanted. But what I'm not gonna do, what I'm not gonna do
Talk to him, bro.
is, yeah, is not get no credit for it. That's what I'm not gonna do. But I really believe that it's very important to be able to recognize this. Again, it's a self-regulation tool. Recognize this and then take action on it immediately. Because otherwise, the bleeding is gonna continue. So you have to take a step back. And then funny shit, funny shit. So I was actually listening to this probably 2 days ago, and it's one of my favorite songs, right? And then after listening to it, it made me think of absolutely about sunken cost fallacy. So Kenny Rogers, the gambler, right? The hook. You got to know when to hold them,
Oh
know when
yeah.
to fold them, know when to
Oh yeah.
walk away, know when to run.
Know when to run, right?
And never count your money while you're sitting at the table. That is that is it in a nutshell. Like, how do you got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them? That's like the biggest ways to recognize sunk cost fallacy. But at the end of the day, if something is a long term, and I'll let you shoot this, Mike. So in transitioning, the question is, so how do you prevent sunk cost fallacy? There's a number of ways to prevent it. And if you're deep into how this works, you definitely want to see a therapist because this is, again, it's just a cognitive bias, but for some people, it can be thicker than that, right? It could be parts of experience. Experience is one of those things that you definitely just need a therapist for. But for something that is deep, it's like relationships, that's therapy. But something that is deep, for me, how do you prevent it? The biggest prevention is initial evidence, right? So the same way that you do technical analysis, fundamental analysis, and this is just me nerding. And if you're not that big of a nerd, put it on paper, right? Put it on paper and let's do some simple accounting math. What does this thing provide me? What will this thing provide me long term? And what would be the cost if I continue to do this and it provided me nothing? Right? 9 times out of 10, the math will math. Even in relationships, you start writing down, what does this person do for me? What do I do for this person? Of course, you want to account into emotionally. The biggest part of this, though, Mike, is can something else provide me what I'm looking for that this thing provides me? Right. Whether it's a stock or a meme coin or a person, is this the only tool or person that can do this for me? And I get the expected return for my investment because you have an expected return. If I do this and this, I'm going to get this and this. Is there something else that can provide me what I expect out of my return? And I'm gonna get off my soapbox from there.
But I like what you said towards the end because it is in line with my thoughts on the whole sunken cost fallacy and the prevention of it or the cure per se, because you really can't prevent it. There's
You can't.
no prevention of this.
Yeah, good point.
To me, the sunken cost fallacy is realistically, like you've already said, it's a psychological thing. It's something that we put into our own heads. And I think I'm not a therapist, obviously, I'm a financial coach. But again, like you said, we got to put that therapist hat on as
Yeah.
well when doing financial coaching. And I specialize in the mindset of it anyway. So that's the first thing that I typically attack. But I look at the sunken cost fallacy as a issue of fear. It's almost
Mm.
like a fear of missing out is what makes you stay in it.
Oh, that's good.
Rob mentioned stocks. I mentioned day trading, and day trading is definitely a huge example of the sunken cost fallacy because you can get into a horrible trade and it's going bad for you in a negative. I've seen people and I've talked to people get into the negative of three, four, $5,000 and still holding this trade because again, it's a fear. It's okay. One, they're afraid of losing the money, and this definitely falls in line with a lot of people's financial decisions and the sunken cost fallacy. A lot of people are afraid to part with their money, and so anytime that money starts disappearing, that gets in your head
Oh
first.
yeah. Oh yeah.
That's in your head first. So now logic has gone out of the window. And now fear has come in and sat down and said, okay, hey, I'm here now. Logic is gone. It went to lunch, it's gone. Fear is there now. And so you have to recognize that. You have to take a step back and say, hold on. Because first off, fear is not based in reality. Fear is an emotion that is based off of something you expect to happen. Okay. And a survival instinct kicks in your head. And so that's all fear is. So you have to confront that and say, okay, this is not realistic.
Right.
Even with the financial aspect of this, you have to look at this and say, hold on, what I expected is not realistic. Or what I'm feeling right now, this may not be a realistic thing. This may be based on fear. And so once you confront it for what it is, then logic starts to come back into it. Okay, hold on. Let's kick the fear out. Let's put logic back in here. And Rob was saying, now let's take a look at this and technically analyze this now and say, okay, what is this really? We know what it's not. This is not a money making opportunity. This is not something good for my time. This is not that. What this is a waste of my time or a waste of my money. Now, what can I do now to fix this? Because you have to forgive yourself for that. It's okay. It happens. You ain't the only one. It happens. Let it go. Now, what do I do going forward? And I say that because most of the things we confront in life, we have to forgive ourselves and move forward. It's not about what happened, it's about how you respond to it now. So the sunken cost fallacy is definitely a good example of that. It's okay, yes, this happened. Okay, look, it wasn't a good look. But now, how do you respond to that? And this is what separates the successful from the non successful is how they handle, okay, yeah, this happened to me. Can I move on from this? Or am I going to just keep digging the hole?
Right.
So stop digging the hole, come out of the hole, and throw that dirt back on it. This ain't the play.
For sure.
So hopefully that wasn't too metaphorical but or psychological, but to put this in just simple terms, take the fear out of it, start thinking more logically, and process it in a more constructive way. Sometimes letting things go is the best thing that you could do for yourself.
That's deep. As I was listening to you, and this is probably something that I definitely wanted to mention, but you wrapped it to wrap everything that you said up in a nutshell. Is the biggest thing that comes from this is learning how to take an L. I think a lot of us don't know how to take an L because we're too prideful or too embarrassed. But once you learn how to take an L, then you can move on from that because we know, especially in day trading, if you take an L and you set your floor to like a anything less than 10%, 20%. Now, 10%, 20% you want to eat because it works the other way. So let's talk really quickly about because I want to close this one out because we're running up on that time. On the scale, if I lose 20%, I'm out. But some people don't have that. They haven't set that floor for themselves,
Mm-hmm.
right? They just, hey, this is going down, and it's just eating. And it's got to bounce, and then all of a sudden, everything gone. First of all, you got to set a floor for what you're willing to, and that's in anything across the board, right?
No,
Not just
absolutely.
stocks and investing, but set a floor to, hey, I can't do this anymore. I'm out after 20% of a loss. But this works the same thing as you're gaining too, right? So you have to pay attention to it. It's actually a different cognitive bias, but also along the same realm as you see that evidence, if you gain 10, 20%, you know how the market works and you know that the rarity of something bumping 30, 40, 50% is a unicorn. And it happens, but it's a unicorn. Stick to your logic and get out because you know where the downfall is. You know where the peak is, and you still trying to outperform the peak. And then again, it goes both ways, but you just got to know when to get out, know when to take an L, and definitely know when to take a win and walk away. But yeah, man, that's it. That's it. So I hope everybody got some value out of this for sure. That's all we want to do, kick some free game, and hopefully people can take that with them, put it in their tool bag, and become successful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hopefully everybody had fun with this. That's the thing, because I had an awesome time. This is what Rob mentioned this word a lot. And I'm gonna say I like to nerd out.
Yeah.
This is what I like to do. And for me, talking money is my opportunity to nerd out. I understand numbers. I understand the psychology of money. And that's something I learned over the years. And this is why I love talking about it so much, is because life a lot of times imitates arts. How you handle your finances is probably how you're going to handle a lot of other things in life, your relationships, your business, your job. They all, how you do one is how you going to do the other. So
Facts.
that's what I hope that people take away from listening to the two of us is learning how to properly approach life in general, because again, a lot of that stuff starts to come together
Yeah.
when you start putting it together the right way. um Again, I had an awesome time talking about this. Hopefully you as the audience gets extreme amount of value from this, and if you're making this mistake, stop. Get
Just
out of
stop.
that. Just stop what you're doing. Get the fear out your head and move towards that more logical mindset of, okay, hey, listen, like Rob said, take the L sometimes. Trust me, it's gonna be okay.
It's worth it. It's worth it just to take the L and walk away. But all right, listeners, truly appreciate y'all. We'll see y'all next week. Take care. And we are over and out. You just tapped into the 7th Sense, where the mind meets the money and the legacy gets built.
It's your boy Money Mike, the financial Thanos, snapping one myth at a time and leaving no financial lies standing.
And I'm Coach RL, mind right, money right, legacy locked in. If today's episode gave you game, make sure you rate, review, and share it with someone.
Hey, follow us on all platforms and keep the conversation going, guys. DM us your questions, your myths, and your money wins.
Until next time, think deeper, move smarter, and keep building.
This is the 7th Sense Podcast. We out.